Morning world, it's 9 o'clock in the morning, it's the 6th of October 2014, and in case any of you have been living on Pluto or in the dark, then we've got an eclipse of the moon coming up in the next 48 hours, and it's going to be a strong one. And although all of the aspects it's making, the grand trine, the conjunction of Uranus, the opposition to the Sun, none of these can be seen as truly difficult on their own. When you add the whole pattern together, and especially the T-square from the full eclipsed moon and the Sun to Pluto, then there's a different element. I did a section on the Sun square Pluto a couple of days ago. So here's a section on the Moon square Pluto. Again, it's from my book, Pluto, the Lore of Pluto, Reshaping the Void, which will be out now in about 2.5 weeks' time. Details through me at my email. Here we go, Moon square Pluto. The astronomical moon reflects the light of the sun onto the earth. So the astrological moon reflects the light of the sun out of the individual. The moon is about one's day-by-day lifestyle, feelings, emotions, sensitivities and habit patterns. As the sun represents your individuality, so the moon represents your personality. Fundamentally, the sun is seen as masculine and projective, whilst the moon is seen as feminine and receptive. And when that receptive moon is square to potentially subversive and dark energies from Pluto, all hell, sometimes literally, can break loose. This aspect is very sensitive to emotional undercurrents in the domestic sphere. And regardless of gender, the person with this aspect will often find that their relationships with important women in their lives will have a profound and possibly difficult impact. It may be a lack of clarity or emotional transparency in the relationship with the main female nurturing influence when young, normally the mother. Although often the Moon-Pluto square is common in the charts of people raised by grandparents or family members other than parents. There is the spectre of emotional abandonment here. Feeling isolated from an early age with a sense of being uncared for or even worse, unwanted. As a client says, I know the feeling of wanting to scream and have learned to let it out after much putting up with people and situations. This aspect is not uncommon in the cases of emotional and sometimes other forms of abuse, and in extreme cases of both the square or the opposition of the moon to Pluto, the individual may confuse pain and degradation with love, to a degree that becomes almost sadomasochistic. If as adults these people attempt to sweep unpleasant childhood experiences under the carpet, then they may become emotionally fragmented and unable to sustain steady or consistent emotional patterns. This is one of the most common astrologically repetitive aspects, in that it can appear in successive generations' charts until eventually one brave soul will face up to the fear and deal with it, ending lifetimes of pain and abuse. When young, there is likely to be a physical and metaphorical fear of the dark, which is probably a prenatal memory of life in the womb. As the individual gradually matures into puberty and beyond, this unconscious fear of darkness can persist until consciously accepted and allowed, often done best in adult years by going into nature alone on some type of purgative and or shamanistic ritual. The moon is about individual feeling and sensitivities. It cannot be explained or experienced in rational or analytical ways. Similarly, but different, Pluto represents the psychological and the unconscious. Again, areas that cannot be rationalized or consciously understood. And when these two deep emotive forces are at war with each other, there will be times of scarily accurate perception that borders on the truly psychic. Equally at the same time, there also exists the capacity for that perception to be so skew with that it can only be described as not so much psychic as psychotic. The challenge of the Moon-Pluto square is to face fears, knowing and accepting that they cannot be unconsciously understood or logicalized, but they can only be felt and hopefully released in a loving and sensitive but also firm and disciplined way. It is the willing elimination of not the childlike side of oneself or one's nature, but the despotic infant that is being asked here, to use one's emotional insights for the psychological benefit of all, as opposed to just for oneself. The moon square Pluto can bring a degree of emotional warping, and sometimes it is only by asking those few loved and trusted friends and family their honest and true opinion that these people can get real objectivity. At the end of the day, It's better to scream, cry and release than it is to fester and become embittered. There you go, folks. Moon square Pluto. Catch you later. Bye.